All right. Well, I have 2 minutes after the hour, so let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. I appreciate you joining us this morning. Looks like we have a great turnout. I know we've had over 100 people that have registered, and it looks like there's already more than 80 people that have come onto the ZoomCast this morning. I'm Martin Rosendale. I'm the CEO of the Maryland Technology Council and a partner with Newport CEO Advisors. This is the CapitalM ZoomCast Live. The CapitalM podcast is intended to further the regional conversation around capital markets, define issues, identify solutions, and build consensus to drive change. We have pivoted to a live ZoomCast given the constraints of the pandemic, and our focus these days is on the impact of COVID-19 and our regional response. The Maryland Technology Council is the industry trade association representing the technology and life science companies throughout Maryland. Together with our members, we're improving the business climate in Maryland and helping companies that save, secure, and improve lives around the globe. So before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. As I mentioned a minute ago, everybody will be on mute through the main part of the discussion this morning. When we get to the Q&A, you'll have an opportunity to raise your hand, and then we'll unmute you and allow you to ask questions. Just a reminder, this ZoomCast is being recorded so that people can download it and listen to it or watch to it at a later date. So thank you all again for joining. My guest this morning is Jim Hughes. Jim is the Senior Vice President and Chief Enterprise and Economic Development Officer at the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and he's the President of the UMB Biopark. Jim, thank you for joining me this morning. I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything that you do, and I absolutely appreciate your support of the Maryland Tech Council over the years. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the great work you do with the Tech Council. It's been a huge part of, well, my personal education and connection with the tech community for the last 20 to 30 years. So Tech Council has been huge and incredibly useful for the university as we try to do a better job of connecting with the Maryland tech community. So thank you.
Great. My pleasure. Thank you. I also want to let everybody know that behind the scenes this morning, Claire Murphy, also from the University of Maryland in Baltimore, and Claire will be monitoring the chat room. So if you have any questions or any comments, Claire will be able to see those in the chat room, and she'll be answering those questions as she can. If she can't answer them, she will give you some contact information, and we'll work on answering those questions and get answers back to you later. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning.
Great. All right, so Jim, let's jump right into it. Could you take a minute and tell us about yourself? Tell us about why you do what you do, and give us some idea, how you and your colleagues have been responding to the COVID-19 pandemic and the public health emergency.
Well, I have been in Maryland now for 30 years, been engaged in economic development and innovation for almost all of that time. About 20 years ago, the university started hiring a few of us who were non-academics from the business world or economic development world to help get the technologies out of the university into the marketplace and to begin developing stronger collaborations with companies. So I run the Research Administration Office, the Tech Transfer Office, and the Biopark at the university, really serving our collective offices serve as liaisons between the faculty, the researchers at the university, and the private sector. And as I'll describe, we have incredible resources at the university, but sometimes they can tend to get trapped there. So we try to make those connections. The university as an academic health center has really been at the front line for COVID. So many of our faculty, our medical school faculty, are out there treating patients, treating COVID patients. We have two of our faculty are on Governor Hogan's COVID response task force. So we're involved at the highest levels of helping to advise the governor on state policies. So very engaged in the COVID-19, and as it as it turns out, we actually have a great deal of expertise that's very pertinent to a pandemic like this.
Mm-hmm. So what about your office? Is everybody working from home now? Have you made
Yeah.
the same transition as the rest of the business world?
Yes, we did. So that's we're learning to do that. I have an office of about 65 people, and all of us are working from home. A few of us sneak in for half a day a week to where we have physical things that we need to do in the office, but the vast majority of us are entirely at home. So we're spending a lot of time on Zoom and WebEx. And I got to say, in the beginning, I had no idea how this was going to work, but it's actually, it's been disorienting, but we've been able to carry on pretty effectively.
Yeah, it's interesting. Those times that you get to sneak into the office, it feels like a luxury nowadays, doesn't it?
Yes, it's almost it's a strange, guilty pleasure to go into the office, but we do that rarely.
Yeah. So I'm sure everybody knows of the University of Maryland in Baltimore, but I don't think everybody knows everything about the university, what it does. I mean, there's so many amazing things that are happening at the university. Could you take a few minutes and tell us, give us an update on the university, tell us more about it, and just kind of fill us in.
Yeah, we are an incredible place, actually, that's been around for over 200 years. We were the first public medical school in the country. Started over 200 years ago in Baltimore City. And we grew from that medical school to add 3 other health sciences schools. So we have one of the largest nursing schools in the country, a great school of pharmacy, and a great school of dentistry. We also have the state's largest law school and school of social work. So it's those 6 professional schools with a interdisciplinary graduate school. So it's a very unusual collection of schools that we have. We have about 7,000 students. 75% of them are graduate students. So it's got a different vibe than what you would think of as a typical undergraduate campus. For the most part, people have gone through their undergraduate years and now they are working to become lawyers and doctors and pharmacists and such. We have about 7,000 staff and faculty. So the majority of our faculty are very engaged in research. We have over 2,000 faculty that are primarily research and clinical faculty. We are closely tied to the University of Maryland Medical Center. We used to be one organization, but we're actually now 2 separate legal entities, but very, very closely entwined. So all of the physicians at the University of Maryland Medical Center are on faculty at the School of Medicine. And then we're connected to their statewide network of hospitals. Very much a part of the university system of Maryland, the dozen universities within the system. We work very closely, particularly with the University of Maryland College Park. We have a lot of joint programs there. We actually have a joint vice president for research between the 2 campuses, a lot of programs in bioengineering, bioinformatics that bring together those 2 universities. We actually have in Montgomery County in Shady Grove a joint institute, IBBR, which is College Park, UMB, and NIST. So a unusual collaboration with 2 state universities and a federal agency. We also work very closely with UMBC, which is just a couple miles from our campus. So huge number of things going on at the university.
Yeah, that's amazing. Jim, when we were talking the other day, you made a comment that really struck me. You said that there are something on the order of 2,000 researchers doing amazing things. Could you give us a little bit more insight into the kinds of research and what's happening in those areas?
Yeah, absolutely. Almost all of our research is biomedical research. We are School of Medicine, from a research volume standpoint, is one of the top 10 public medical schools in the country and one of the top 20 medical schools overall. Last year, we did $660 million worth of research. NIH is the largest sponsor of research at the university, but we're also working with over 300 companies, doing about 10% of our research, 60 million, is with companies. We kind of thinking of the areas of research, we have a little bit of research in almost everything, but we have very strong concentrations in cancer. We're one of 40 designated cancer centers in the country, a very strong cancer program. Of course, our proximity to NCI and NIH is very helpful there. So we have a lot of people who spent part or much of their career at NIH and then join us. We also, and this really pertains to COVID, we are among the top infectious disease research centers in the world. Bob Gallo, the co-discoverer of the HIV/AIDS virus when he was at NIH, joined us probably about 25 years ago and runs a very large Institute for Human Virology and does work around the world. We've done over $1 billion worth of work in sub-Saharan Africa through IHV. We also have one of the best and oldest centers for vaccine development that has invented their own vaccines. We have the only cholera vaccine in the US was invented at UMB, and we have helped do clinical trials and helped develop dozens of other vaccines. So the whole infectious disease area is really coming to bear very directly and under COVID. Another area I might mention, some of your members might be familiar with Claire Fraser. She ran Tiger in Montgomery County for many years, founded that. And for the last 12 years, she's run our Institute for Genome Sciences with about 100 people in Baltimore working in genomic research, among the top 10 centers in the country. So a lot of great things going on.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's interesting that you mentioned Bob Gallo. I had a chance to, he joined one of the MTC events a couple years ago, and I had a chance to sit next to him and chat with him about the work that he's doing, and frankly, the work that he's done over the course of his career and his life. And amazing man, everything that he's accomplished and everything that he continues to work on.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you look at before HIV/AIDS, he was one of the preeminent researchers in the world before that, and his work looking at the leukemia and the impact of viruses in causing leukemia was groundbreaking work. And that was long before AIDS came along and his role in addressing HIV/AIDS.
Yeah. So I mean, that's an amazing set of resources, and I'm sure we could spend the rest of the hour talking about just the research that's happening. How is that being applied? How have some of these researchers pivoted to address COVID-19, and what's happening in the university with respect to the response to COVID-19?
Well, we've become incredibly focused on the COVID-19, and actually, as difficult as it's been, we have shut down much of the non-COVID-19 research, both from a safety standpoint and social distancing, but also to enable us to focus most of our efforts on COVID-19. So we are doing some of the very first clinical trials. There's been a lot of press over the Pfizer RNA vaccine candidate that just began testing in the US. And we were actually the first to begin a clinical trial. And this is a Pfizer vaccine that they hope to bring to the market as early as September. And we started enrolling patients on Monday and injecting patients on Monday, and we're one of just four centers in the country doing those clinical trials. Just 2 weeks ago, we were working with the Gilead potential therapeutic, remdesivir, for COVID-19, which is one of the more promising therapeutics. So we've started those clinical trials as well. We currently have a team at the university that's evaluating, we've had 50 or 60 suggestions of clinical trials. And so we're actually going through that list and wanting to really focus our efforts to do the highest impact trials. So I expect we'll do another half dozen or more COVID-19 related clinical trials. Mm-hmm. I mentioned Claire Fraser, her group in the Institute for Genome Sciences with support from the state is building up the capacity to do high volume rapid testing of COVID-19. And over the next several months, we're working to build the capacity that we'll be able to do 20,000 tests a day for COVID-19. And that we received some very nice support, $2.5 million from the governor to help build up that capacity. Mm-hmm. So with the whole infectious disease area and the genomics, we were in pretty good shape to really hit the ground running and be one of the leading centers in the country to try to address this. I will mention also our other schools that you wouldn't necessarily think of getting involved in COVID-19. Our law school has had a very strong program, really dating back to 9/11 on emergency preparedness. So they've put in emergency preparedness plans around the country and have worked with county and jurisdictions and the university. So we tackling it from that angle. And then of course, COVID-19 is really impacting the poorest communities in Maryland and around the country, and our School of Social Work, which is very engaged in working with those communities and dealing with health disparities. It's become all the more critical with COVID-19, the way that's been attacking the poorest of our citizens. So all the schools have really got an important role to play here.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So when you mentioned the schools and the schools of social work, something struck me. Are the students in these programs, are they getting involved as volunteers in helping this battle against COVID-19?
Well, that was something that we've had a lot of discussions about, and we decided that we took our students out of clinical settings mm-hmm. to protect their safety. So it's really our faculty that are in clinical settings. Now, we do have many of our students are personally volunteering, but from a safety of keeping our students safe, we have taken them out of a direct role there. But ordinarily, our students are out in the community working with people all the time. But that's been one of the unfortunate struggles here as we try to keep our students safe.
I think it's great that many of them have been volunteering, and also I think that's a wise decision that you've made. So, you know, it's been amazing to me to watch the collaboration in the response to COVID-19. And you talked about the fact that you're involved with some of the first clinical trials. You're getting involved on the diagnostic front. I mean, the health world, the medical world has been moving at such a tremendous pace. In fact, another podcast that we did about a week and a half or so ago, the guest on the podcast said that we are making these advancements and these developments at a pace that if you would have asked anybody in the industry just 8 weeks ago, they would have told you it was impossible. And so I'm curious, the work that the university is doing. I mean, you're obviously a part of this collaboration. You're a part of this ability to pivot and to work at this breakneck speed. Have you had to do anything special to make that happen, or is this just the will of the university, the faculty, that they saw the need and they just said, we have to get this done, let's go?
Yeah, one of the great strengths of a university is you have a huge number of investigators that follow their personal passions, and that's the way you become creative. And you have these 2,000 research faculty that pursue funding, and they are in a whole slew of different fields, which is great. But what we've done in this situation is really focus the resources as much as possible. That's not to say that people aren't still doing their individual research and following their pursuits, but we've been able to bring everybody together at the hospital and the schools, and working with the other universities to really target resources. My group, we always take great pride in being able to get a contract done very quickly. We're now getting that done in days as opposed to weeks. And we're still doing good contracts, and our IRB that's reviewing safety protocols is still the highest standards there, but we're doing everything much more quickly than we did previously. And part of that is focusing almost entirely on COVID, so you're able to redirect the resources.
Right. Yeah. It's just amazing to watch. When I think back, it was only the middle of January when we first started to get the sequence of the virus genome out of China, and here we are in the beginning of May, and you're already testing patients with a vaccine. Which again, that's just amazing that we can move at that kind of a speed. So Jim, you talked about collaboration. You talked about working with industry. I know we have businesses out there today that could benefit from these amazing resources and the knowledge and skill sets that the faculty and students at the university have. How does an interested executive or business go about making the connections with you or the university to facilitate some of that collaboration?
Yeah. Most of the collaborations, people connect directly with faculty, and our faculty are prolific at publishing articles, and in more normal times participating in conferences. So they're out and about. And I'll say the majority of connections are direct with faculty. But we have built an office of about 36 people, actually, several integrated offices that are focused on making those matches and then putting the agreements in place. So on the one hand, please, anybody who's listening, participating in this, please email me directly, jhughes@umaryland.edu, and I will help to make those matches. We have a team of about 18 people who are focused on helping companies develop scope of work, budgets, putting agreements in place. And as I say, we do over 300 of those a year. And then we also have a tech transfer team that is out connecting intellectual property that we've developed. Steer people towards the website. We have over 300 technologies on our website, which is umventures.org. That's 300 in the life sciences. We also have on that same website another 300 technologies from University of Maryland College Park, and that's software and engineering and clean energy. So we have 600 technologies on our website with details about the technology and the patent protection and the faculty who are doing that. So it's a never-ending job, but one we take great pleasure in to find those matches. And then also working with the companies to identify funding. There are some state programs that can help fund the research. So we're engaged in that every day.
Mm-hmm. I just want to remind everybody that the chat room has been kind of quiet. So if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat room, and Claire will respond. And Claire, maybe you could also put the email address and the website that Jim just mentioned in there for people to see as well. So Jim, in looking at how companies interact with the university and the opportunities, and I know it's not just startups. It's not just somebody who wants to start a company going to the university and looking for technology and IP. An existing company that may want to expand their portfolio can go to the university as well and find investigators and potential intellectual property that can be licensed. In fact, there was a recent example of a company just having done that, expanding their intellectual property. can you talk about that a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, we have tech transfer, which is essentially looking at the technologies that faculty have created at the university. We have a team of patent attorneys, and we apply provisional patents on about 100 technologies a year. And we execute about 50 licenses a year. And about 80% of those are with existing companies and 20% with new startups. Just yesterday, we signed a license of a new technology, AI medical technology, with a company called Hughes AI, which we actually launched about a year ago out of our School of Pharmacy, led by a couple faculty members in our School of Pharmacy. And they are capturing the data from a million patients to help doctors to do diagnoses of patients. So looking at gathering all of this information, that it becomes a then tool for doctors to look at symptoms and figure out the best way of moving forward. And that was something that started at the university. They've stayed in close contact, and they've brought in other technologies. So that's pretty typical that when we have a startup company, that they will license additional technologies as they move along.
That's interesting. I would have guessed the opposite. I would have guessed that 80% of the tech transfer was to go to create new startups, and 20% would have been to support existing businesses. I would have reversed those statistics if anybody had asked me. That's fascinating. So there was another recent announcement. I know that the university has had a number of successes in the past, but there was a recent one. I'd give you an opportunity to talk about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. In the last 5 or 6 years, we've had very strong growth in the number of medical device companies that we've done and that have had success. And just last week, a company called Breethe was acquired by Abiomed, which is a company up in Massachusetts. And what Breethe is doing is has developed the world's first portable artificial lung. So it oxygenates the blood directly, and it's a very small portable device that enables people who are having severe lung injuries and respiratory distress to not be on a ventilator. And ventilators are certainly can be lifesavers, but they're also problematic in that they cause damage to the lungs just by inserting the ventilator. So very exciting company. It doesn't have FDA approval yet, but they've made great progress. They employ about 20 people in Baltimore, and those people are going to stay in Maryland. But with the resources of Abiomed, they'll be able to take this product hopefully much more quickly to market. And it's interesting, going back to COVID-19, yeah, this is one of the ways that well, hopefully COVID-19 is behind us before this gets to the market, but to address future pandemics and other infections that that impact the lungs. So great company. It was also one of the first companies that we invested in. So about 5 years ago, we started investing in some of our startups. And we've had, out of our first 5 companies that we invested in, 4 of them have exited, which I think is a remarkable success rate. I don't know that we'll keep that up, but it's generated a 7-fold return to the university that we've been able to reinvest in future companies and in building our programs. So that has been a very nice added benefit. And the focus of the investments is not simply to get a return, but it helps to recruit strong CEOs when they know that the university can be one of their first investors. It also helps to attract other investors to the program.
So Jim, you mentioned investment, and I know that the university does so much more than just good research. You support small business, you support startups. Could you talk a little bit more about that kind of support? You have the Momentum Fund, you have other opportunities that are available to startups and small business. I think it would be of interest to everyone listening this morning to hear more about those kinds of things that you do to support business in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So UMB had started investing by itself, and we had a pretty good success, but we were investing very small amounts of money, just $50,000 to $100,000. And we started working with the Board of Regents and the University System of Maryland, and some of you may know Tom Sadowski at USM. And we created the Maryland Momentum Fund, and that enables us to invest up to $500,000 in companies that are connected with any of the USM institutions. So certainly College Park and UMBC and Towson and all of the universities throughout the system. We were able to recruit a wonderful entrepreneur, Claire Broder Johnson, who's built companies and sold companies, invested companies in the clean tech industry to run it. And we've now invested in about 10 companies, a total of $2.5 million. And to be eligible, you could license a technology from any of the USM institutions as a startup company. You could be a graduate. So if you think of all of the graduates of University of Maryland College Park, they are all eligible to receive funding from the program, or if you're located in one of our research parks. Now it is an investment program, so it's not a grant program. We've reviewed well over 200 companies at this point and invested in 10. So it's a pretty high bar. Companies, they also need to bring in matching funds, but it's been a wonderful program, and we're very excited about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but even 10 out of 200, that's actually a pretty good ratio. I know venture capitalists that I talk to will tell me that they'll review 5,000 companies, talk to 500, and invest in 5. So that 10 out of 200 is still pretty good ratio.
Yeah.
So Jim, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the biopark. The biopark has accomplished some amazing things. We've got fantastic companies that are there or coming out of there. Paragon Bioservices, later being purchased by CapitalM. I know Illumina moved in. Be Well Connected Health. I mean, it's just amazing. We've got this asset there in Baltimore, and I think the world would like to learn more about it.
Well, thank you. Yes, we're very proud of the biopark. We took land that had been undeveloped in West Baltimore for 20 years, and we acquired about 14 acres, and we now have developed about half of that land. There's been a total of $450 million worth of capital investment, which just dwarfs anything else in that neighborhood, and we've built it up to about 1,000 employees. But as you say, what's really most exciting is looking at the companies that have been there. Marco Chacon, who's been a board member of the Tech Council and an award winner in the past, brought Paragon to the biopark with about 30 employees in 2009, not an ideal time to be building a company. And he later brought in Pete Buzzy to lead the company, and Pete, I believe, is on your board right now.
Yep.
And they now have 1,000 employees across the state of Maryland. So not just in the biopark in Baltimore, they have employees in Anne Arundel County. They acquired a facility from Novavax in Montgomery County. They're in Baltimore County. So just tremendous success story. And then, as you mentioned, Illumina, which is the biggest manufacturer of DNA sequencing equipment, was looking for their first East Coast facility, and they were considering sites all up and down the East Coast, and thrilled that they chose Maryland, and even more that they chose Baltimore and the biopark. And they are hosting training sessions there for their customers. So we have hundreds of people coming in to the biopark and the pharmaceutical industry to get trained on Illumina equipment. And then we also have a great group of startup companies. And what's been very nice is the various interactions among those companies. So it's really becoming a community where the companies are collaborating with one another. They're working with the university, and they're becoming very active in the community, and certainly in the biotech community in the state of Maryland, but also in the community of West Baltimore.
Mm-hmm. And the biopark is expanding, right? I think that it's a new building is being referred to as 4MLK, I think is
Yes.
what I've seen.
Yeah. So one aspect of the biopark is that we are full, and we've actually been full for a couple years now. And anytime any space comes available, we have a bit of a struggle among the various companies there as to who gets it. So that's enabled us to move forward with it's going to be by far our biggest building, a 330,000 square foot building for MLK, symbolically very important. It'll be the first building on Martin Luther King Boulevard that will actually embrace Martin Luther King Boulevard and have that address and really speak to the history of Baltimore, and also be this building where great biotech discoveries will be made. So we expect there'll be 1,000 people working in that building, and we hope to break ground later this summer, early fall. We've been pushed back a little bit because of COVID-19, but we just did the first virtual Baltimore City Council hearing to help get the approval. So we're working through it.
That's great. So Jim, if somebody's interested in the biopark or whatever new space will come available with the build out of that new building, should they contact you through the same email address that you gave earlier, or is there another point of contact for those kinds of
Yes, absolutely. Please feel free to contact me. I just mentioned we have a wonderful group of people. Jane Schaub is the executive director and associate vice president at the university. So she leads the charge with the biopark. Phil Robalato, former head of business development at Celera Genomics, has been running tech transfer for us, and just wonderful guy, very focused on getting deals done and doing good deals and moving quickly. And Mike Roller runs our Center for Clinical and Corporate Contracts. So please contact me, and I'll deal with it myself or get people in the hands of one of that group of people.
Yeah, that's great. Jane is another one who's been a tremendous friend of the technology and life science industry, and a good friend of the Tech Council as well. So it's a great crew that you've got there at the biopark. So Jim, we've talked about a lot this morning. Is there anything that you wanted to cover that we didn't get to?
Well, I mentioned it earlier. I just the Tech Council really plays a tremendous role in Annapolis in bringing the tech community together, and particularly appreciate the way you've embraced working with the universities. And I know the Tech Council's created a COVID-19 task force. USM has created a COVID-19 task force, and I know there are discussions going on there to create a marketplace of sorts, an exchange to connect Tech Council members with the university. And going back to the origins of the Tech Council, helping bring the universities to Montgomery County way back when you were the Montgomery County Tech Council. So I would just ask and encourage you to keep working on the universities, telling us what you need and pushing us and engaging with us. But that's incredibly helpful to us.
No, I appreciate that. And like I said earlier, you've been a tremendous friend to the Tech Council and industry. And for everybody listening this morning, what Jim's referring to with respect to the task forces, in Maryland, we created the COVID-19 Coalition, which is the group of companies that are working on diagnostics, vaccines, therapeutics for COVID-19, as well as companies that are supporting those efforts. And that group has grown to 40 companies, believe it or not, that have pivoted, because keep in mind, nobody was working on this just a few months ago. And so all these companies have had to pivot their attention and their focus to make this happen. And the University System of Maryland formed a task force that includes researchers from throughout the system, including UMB, of course. And so now we've been able to connect that task force with the coalition. So just, this effort here in Maryland and the Mid-Atlantic has been tremendous. The faculty at UMB and the other University of Maryland campuses have been amazing. Just the brain power, the knowledge base that is there, the works that's there. You mentioned expanding the capacity to do testing to 20,000 tests per day. That alone is phenomenal, because that's what's going to allow us to reopen the state. That's what's going to allow us to get back to business as usual. And I'm amazed every day at what's been happening. When we get to the end of this and we look back, we're going to see so many heroes that stepped up and just made things happen. And Jim, I think you and your team, the university faculty and staff, you're going to be in that group, because it's taken tremendous collaboration to make these things happen in such an amazing way and at such breakneck speed to address this public health emergency.
Thank you very much. It's a very difficult time, but I admit it's very, very rewarding to be at a university and in a state that is addressing this as aggressively as we are. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So Claire, before we go to the Q&A, did anything come up in the chat room that you would like to bring to our attention that we ought to address?
Yeah, sure. So it seems like there's some interest in learning more about the Ventures operation, and also what kind of external support the university has for developing IP. Do you want to answer those now, or I can do them offline?
Sure. Well, I can talk a little bit about Ventures. So Ventures is the way we've branded our tech transfer operations, and a critical aspect of it is a joint initiative with the University of Maryland College Park. So we have separate offices at each campus, but very much working together. And increasingly, we're having joint projects, joint intellectual property, as we get engineers from College Park working with surgeons at UMB. So we built up a very strong team, a lot of people from industry at UMB, and we have 3 patent attorneys on staff. We also work with external patent firms. So we spend over $1 million a year on external patents to try to get as good protection as we can of our intellectual property. And then we're actively engaged in working with biotech, pharmaceutical, med device companies, trying to find the best match, and not just trying to license something to get a deal done, but trying to find a match of somebody who's truly vested and capable of taking the technology to market. The other aspect of it increasingly is to work with those companies. You don't want to simply do the deal, hand it off, and move on. So we've been focusing more attention on ongoing assistance, working very closely with TEDCO to bring in funding to those companies. Of course, our own investment program brings in funding. The state has a program managed at College Park called MIPS, Maryland Industrial Partnerships, that actually provides funding, can provide up to 90% of the cost of research funding that a company would sponsor at the university. So we have a whole bunch of activities, and we're adding to them or refining them continuously.
Great. So Jim, let's open it up to questions and answers. And just before we do, I want to point something out to everybody. So Tricia O'Neill has put some really interesting information into the chat room. Unfortunately, Tricia, it went just to the panelists. So what we're going to do is we'll capture this information from the chat room, and we'll send it to everybody who's been on the call this morning. And that way we'll be able to get this information out, because this is some really good information, Tricia, that you put in here. I appreciate it. So if anyone has any questions, there should be an option to raise your hand at the at the bottom of your screen. It looks like Robert has a question.
Hey, good morning. Thank you guys for hosting this awesome webinar. So my startup company has been doing some diagnostic R&D for COVID. We've been spending several $1,000s per patient biofluid specimen, which are mostly remnant specimens. And we are very much interested in working with the UMB system to identify opportunities for us to get biospecimens to really enhance our very encouraging preliminary data that we have right now. I didn't know if UMB saw maybe a possibility of establishing like a biobank that might provide samples for entities beyond my own. I see that to be a major need in COVID-19 research is the access to specimens that can be tested and explored.
Yeah, let me look into that. To this point, we don't have a biobank of specimens, but certainly as the research going forward, that's going to be important. So let me look into that and get back to you.
Hey Robert, while you're on, take a minute. Tell us who your company is.
Yeah, so I am the Director of Research and Development for IES Life Sciences.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Salisbury University alumni. I'm a University of Maryland Eastern Shore PhD toxicology student. Should be receiving my my diploma in the mail this May. And the technology was originally patented by the federal government through a collaborative research agreement between the founder of the company and the FDA. The technology is a qPCR array that looks at interferon subtypes. So 13 interferon alpha subtypes and a number of subtypes from the other interferon type families. And we've looked at interferon signatures as a diagnostic marker or a patient stratification marker. Maybe we've looked into using this tool to help with clinical trial enrollment, patient stratification, and looking at what patient subgroups might have a better response to a particular therapy or a vaccine. Is the immune system being activated potentially by a vaccine, and what does that activation look like, and is it persistent? And so we've looked at through our MIPS project that is a collaboration between Dr. Victor Shaw, the chair of pharmaceutical sciences at UMES, and the company. We've looked at Kawasaki's disease, a number of different herpes comorbidities. So with the COVID outbreak, we started looking at the literature, and everything about the pathology of this virus is so highly entwined with the inflammatory pathways. And everywhere you turn, it looks like there's a different role for interferons playing some part in this disease pathology. And so we believe that your interferon intensity and profiles in correlation to other markers such as viral gene transcripts in a patient sample might be able to determine which patients, what types of patients are going to head towards that acute or really advanced COVID-19 disease, and which patients might be able to experience a much faster recovery without intervention. And we got preliminary data that is starting to stratify some of these patient samples that we've gotten. But again, they're remnant samples that weren't acquired prospectively, and so the grouping and the demographics and everything aren't great. But we're very encouraged by what we have so far. We've been able to detect these signatures in a number of different biospecimens, a number of different biofluids. So we should not have a problem moving forward in getting non-invasive types of sampling. But for now, all that we've been able to get a hold of is commercially available remnant nasopharyngeal swabs, or like remnant plasma, which is not great for RNA expression analysis, which is what we're doing.
Okay. So Robert, I'm gonna ask you to do two things. One, put your contact information in the chat room, and we'll make sure that we get it to Jim and Claire, so that Jim can get back to you. And the other thing is, I believe IES is already a member of the COVID-19 coalition, but whether you are or not, if you go to the MTC website, mdtechcouncil.com, right on the front page, there's a short form you can fill out and describe what it is you're looking for. We've been able to help others that are involved in this response to COVID-19 get biological samples for their work. So if you go in there, fill out that form, take less than 5 minutes. What we will do is we will distribute that among the entire network, so that if anyone knows how to access those samples for you, they can help you. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much. This has been fantastic.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Jim, I don't see any other raised hands.
Okay.
So I just want to take a minute and thank you again. This has been fantastic. We've had a record turnout, over 100 people on the call this morning, which is phenomenal. The information has been great. It's great to be able to share what the university is doing, because I think I don't think we pay enough attention to the amazing work and the assets that we have right here in Maryland and in Baltimore. So thank you for your time this morning. It's been
certainly
fantastic.
Thank you so much for giving me the time, and the audience. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And everybody, I appreciate you on the ZoomCast this morning. Again, this is the Maryland Tech Council CapitalM podcast. We have pivoted to a live ZoomCast, and I hope you've gotten a lot of good information out of it. If you aren't already a member of the Tech Council, I would encourage you to become a member of the Tech Council. I think you'll find that there's a lot of value, a lot of opportunity to network and make connections. So again, this is Marty Rosendale. Thank you all for your time this morning, and I hope to see you soon.